Words from the 13th century Sufi poet, Rumi. Open the window of your heart and look at the beloved's face. Love's task is to create that window so beauty may illuminate the heart. It is in your power, my friend, to gaze constantly at the beloved's face. Make a way to the core of yourself and banish all other impressions. You possess an elixir. Apply it, and by its alchemy, you will turn your enemies into friends. Thus, perfecting yourself, you will be able to reflect the beloved, whose grace is the nourishment of spirit. Come now and let us worship together.
And as Afton Mahoney lights our chalice this morning, I share these words from the Passover Haggadah. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom.
Can we all just get along? With the midterm elections right around the corner, with the partisan politics and mudslinging all over the place, with the balance of power at stake, and with our own need to feel like we can do something about what's happening in the world. Is it possible to find common ground, agree to disagree, and just get along with one another? I'm guessing that many of you likely remember the events surrounding the violent assault of Rodney King, the acquittal of the 4 white police officers who beat him, and the week-long riots in Los Angeles in the early 1990s. It was during those riots in which dozens of people died, hundreds were injured, and millions of dollars of damage sustained, that Rodney King appeared on television with an impassioned plea for folks to stop the violence and vandalism. He is often misquoted as saying, "Can't we all just get along?" which really captures, for some, the essence of how they read that press conference and what appeared to be a call for peace, an end to the protesting and destruction. Others heard in King's speech an actual question: can we all get along? Is it possible? Is our divide so great that we can't cross over? Is the chasm between you and I so wide, building a bridge is impossible? In today's political climate, some may say the answer is yes. Yes, it is impossible. Yes, the gap is too wide. Yes, our differences are insurmountable. Yes, the notion of us all getting along is a pipe dream. And still others say, no, it's not impossible. No, our shared human experience outweighs our political and religious differences. No, through open dialogue and honest sharing, we can overcome the obstacles in our way. No, it is not impossible for us all to get along. We just need to keep trying. I suggest to you that maybe it's both. We can get along with one another. We can learn how to share and listen and be in relationship. And we have an enormous capacity for love. I firmly believe we are capable of loving more, always. It is always possible to love more. And there are some real, practical, fundamental limitations to our getting along. I want to share a little story with you, just a little something about myself. I believe that Subaru makes the best cars on the road. Just go with me here, okay? My first Subaru, an '89 four-door white sedan that may have had a few scratches and dents from my teenage driving years. That car went a whopping 276,000 miles before I gave it to a friend who drove it for a while and then passed it along to another friend. For all I know, it's still on the road today. I don't know. Kind of hope not, but. When I got my second Subaru, I swore that I'd drive it for 13 years or 300,000 miles, whichever came first. Sadly, the years came first. Now, if you're a Subaru fan, you too can probably attest to their durability. The engine will keep going and going like the Energizer Bunny. All the cheap plastic parts will fall off, but the car itself will keep chugging along. I see some laughter. Maybe some of y'all are Subaru owners. You know what I'm talking about. So I say once again, Subaru makes the best cars on the road. And now, for those of you who maybe have seen me leaving the church on Sunday, you may notice that I currently do not, in fact, drive a Subaru. I have moved over into the Toyota family of cars. Subaru's hybrid options are extremely limited, and I felt so strongly that my next car needed to be more environmentally friendly that I wound up trading in my perfectly weighted, all-wheel drive, dark blue Subaru sedan that matched wonderfully my bright yellow kayak and held so many memories. My beloved grandmother and I drove cross-country in that car. My conviction about doing what I can in small ways to help mitigate climate devastation and divest further from fossil fuels led me to make different choices. So that's why I made the switch to Toyota. Now, you may be asking yourself, rightly so, why am I telling you about my car preferences and how far am I going to take this? Maybe you're sitting there thinking to yourself, such and such brand of car is actually better than a Subaru. We can argue about that over coffee. I suspect that there are a lot of opinions in this room, and if we paired off right now and began discussing which make and model is our personal favorite and why, there'd be plenty of disagreement. And that's okay, because that type of disagreement is healthy. We all have preferences, and likely reasons or experiences that inform those preferences. That's all fine and good. Until we're talking about something that goes deeper than mere preference. Preference is choosing the foggy gray for your rec room wall paint instead of the olive green or the sandstone brown. Preference is liking honeydew more than watermelon. Our differences of opinion on such things are normal and healthy and completely understandable. We're all individual people with our own likes and dislikes. It's when our difference of opinion moves into denying another person their dignity, moves into the realm of oppression and discrimination, when what I prefer means the denial of rights and humanity of another person. That's when we can no longer agree to disagree. Robert Jones Jr., known online as Son of Baldwin, writes, "We can disagree and still love each other, unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and denial of my humanity and right to exist. When the playing field is not even, when the power is off balance and our differences are wielded as a weapon with which to harm, then our ability to just get along is most certainly stunted." We're no longer talking about preferences and merely differences of opinion. Feeling that my hometown sports team is better than another team is not the same as feeling that certain people deserve legal rights and others do not. Believing, as I do, that chocolate-covered pretzels are an abomination because you should never mix sweet and salty. That's a far cry from believing that an entire race of people, an entire religious group, or all non-heterosexual people are degenerate, unintelligent, and less deserving of love and justice. When our disagreements are rooted in oppression and one of us has power over the other, this is not the time to suggest that just getting along is all we need to do. We don't just get along when some of us are suffering at the expense of others. Last Wednesday, the United Nations marked the 25th anniversary of the International Day of the Eradication of Poverty. The theme for this year has been coming together with those furthest behind to build an inclusive world of universal respect for human rights and dignity. Sounds almost UU, doesn't it? This day calls for worldwide recognition of the need to address poverty and remembering, in the words of UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, I apologize, I'm sure I mispronounced that ending poverty is not a matter of charity, but a question of justice. Also from the UN, this Wednesday kicks off Disarmament Week, a time designated to highlight the dangers of the ongoing arms race and to advocate for disarmament around the world. Both acknowledgments point toward peace, point toward all of us getting along on a global scale. Here in this country, we have 16 days until the midterm election. I'm moved by how many folks were talking about canvassing and talking about the election. What's at stake for us right now, right here? While children are still being detained away from their families at the borders, while people all over this country are going to sleep hungry or dying because they can't afford to see a doctor or pay for their medicines, while hate groups and religious zealots stoke fear and violence, vandalizing and burning places of worship, while survivors of sexual abuse are ridiculed and disbelieved, while the destruction of our planet continues unabated and environmental science is disregarded and profit remains more important than life on Earth, while our government officials alienate us from other nations and tear down our democracy by suppressing voters and favoring corporate interests, while fascism is growing worldwide and gay people are persecuted in concentration camps in Chechnya, and journalists are tortured and murdered, and wars rage on, and while each of us have our daily struggles, our work, our families to care for, our financial responsibilities, and even while within our own faith movement, a fellow Unitarian Universalist sends a threatening letter to a youth as a means of intimidating their UU professional of color family member. Amidst all of this, I'm really not sure we can all just get along. We can't just get along when the oppression and destruction of entire groups of people continue as it does. When disagreement is rooted in oppression and denying someone's humanity, just getting along doesn't simply apply. South African apartheid activist and Anglican Archbishop Desmond Tutu once said, "If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse, and you say that you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality." That's how oppression works. By asserting power over those with less or no power, and good-natured people alongside either turning away or apathetically suggesting that both sides just need to work it out. When someone's punching you in the face with your hands tied behind your back, it seems quite asinine to hear another say, "Why don't the two of you just get along?" Survivor of the Holocaust and renowned author Elie Wiesel takes this one step further, saying, "We must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. There are things for which agreeing to disagree is simply not sufficient. Instances where our differing preferences mean life and death to those who are being persecuted. I believe our deep calling as Unitarian Universalists is to love. Our principles are based in love. When we come together on Sunday, we come together and talk about how do we live our lives in the pursuit of love? How do we love into our lives? Love is an action. It's a verb. Love isn't a passive thing, a good feeling or a sweet sentiment. Love is doing the work to end suffering, doing the work to bring about justice, doing the work of truly building beloved community. Love calls us into the work of ending intolerance and affirming basic human decency. All the things we say we affirm and believe. Our principles, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, compassion, acceptance, liberty, love, peace. Peace, as Virginia read from Denise Levertov, described a presence, an energy field more intense than war, a vibration of light, facets of the forming crystal. Peace is all of us getting along. And peace, I submit, dear friends, is what our goal is. We must love our way to peace. I want to come back to my love of Subarus and the fact that despite how well they've served me over the years and how much I've enjoyed them and perhaps still prefer them, I decided to get myself the quintessential Unitarian Universalist ride, the Toyota Prius. The car I drive now is more in line with my values. And as soon as I was able, I decided to move in the direction of those values, opting for something different than what I was comfortable with, and something I actually really loved. As a person with certain privileges, the onus is on me to make the changes I need to in order to align my actions with my principles. As a white person, there is so much I don't even have to think about, so much I never need to concern myself with or worry about because of the status afforded to me in our society based solely on the color of my skin and the history of my people. It isn't until I listen to the experiences of my friends and colleagues who are people of color, until I do the work myself to understand what white privilege is, how white supremacy culture works, and how I perpetuate racism every day in both small and large ways. It isn't until I become aware of the difference in our experiences and actually, truly value the worth and dignity of another human being that I choose to change my actions to fall in line with my principles. I loved both of my Subarus. I absolutely loved them. Hopefully this isn't what you remember from this sermon, but I loved my Subarus. And it took years before I even considered owning anything but a Subaru. I'm convinced, though, that what I do reflects my values a whole lot more than what I say. If I say I value other people, but don't believe them when they share their pain with me, if I espouse a belief in equity and compassion and turn away when confronted with injustice and bigotry, if I say I care about this planet we call home and the future generations to come, but I continue to drive my gas-guzzling car knowing full well I have other options, what do I truly believe? What are my real principles? What is my commitment to peace? Now, I don't share this to guilt you into buying a hybrid car or starting to bike commute, and I'm not trying to convince you to take the same steps that I've taken to match my actions with my professed values. But I share this to illustrate that there are times we must change our actions. We must change our behavior to bring ourselves back in line with what it is we truly believe. And such change may be uncomfortable for us. It may cost us something. It may include loss of power, loss of status, loss of the way things have always been. But if we truly seek peace in this world, if we truly believe in love and the possibility of building beloved community together, then we must do love. We must be love. We must match our actions with our understanding of what peace is, and quite frankly, love the hell out of this world. Former South African President Nelson Mandela said, "As long as poverty and injustice and gross inequality persist in our world, none of us can truly rest." So I ask you, can we all just get along? What do you think? I think we've got to keep trying. I think peace is possible if we are committed to working for it. Through love, in love, with love, and by love. Let us commit ourselves to follow love's lead and make peace a reality, right here, right now. May it be so, and amen.